Emergency pod. Sheldon Keefe has been relieved of his head coaching duties. This is the immediate reaction pod on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs-centric podcast hosted by myself. And typically, Dave Morassutti is along for the ride, but he's working right now, and we had to get something out really quickly. It'll be kind of short, sweet, to the point for today's show, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. And I'm sure FanDuel at some point will potentially have the coaching options for who the next Maple Leafs head coach is going to be, because it is a vacant position now. Sheldon Keefe has been relieved of his coaching duties as head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. This doesn't necessarily come as a shock, I don't think, to anyone. We had discussed this previously a couple of times, and I think most people who listen to this podcast would say that I probably was like pro Keefe. That said, I still believe that this is the right decision. Although I believe that Keefe probably had his best coaching season of his career this year to this point, and even in the playoffs, I still think one round and 5 years is simply just not enough. Not enough. So I am on board with the coaching change, and we'll see what comes of it and who ends up being the next guy. But I do think that a new voice is needed. It is time. So what do we see out of Sheldon Keefe in his 5-year tenure? He spent 5 years with the organization with a regular season record of 212, 97, and 40, with a 665 win percentage, which is actually the highest of any Maple Leafs head coach in history. So when we look at Sheldon Keefe and we think, okay, what was his legacy like here in Toronto? What will he be remembered by? I think he'll be remembered as a terrific regular season coach. A coach that won a lot of games for this team, right? The coach that continued to go up the most wins leaderboard year after year. And it helped, obviously, when you look at the group that had been assembled for him. It's a very talented group of players. But he got them to buy in and got them to play, pretty well throughout the regular season. But I think what will always be remembered about this group and this core players and, the head coach of the team is that they just couldn't get it done in the playoffs ultimately. And Keefe was a whipping boy for, a lot of that, where he had been outcoached a lot come playoff time, where he was either in his head, where he was, over thinking things with the line matching, overplaying his hand a little bit, or just clearly outperformed by the coach on the other bench. Like we've come away from many series saying Keefe got outcoached, and that was a reason for why, they had lost a lot of these games here. I didn't think that was necessarily the case in this past season. I actually thought that he did outcoach Jim Montgomery, but the problem is it took him, I guess 5 games into round one to get the buy-in from the guys, but not just 5 games, 5 years and 5 games, right? And sadly, the team's playoff record, not nearly as superb, anywhere even close to as good as their regular season record. And that's ultimately what led to his dismissal, right? The lack of playoff success. I think in a vacuum, if you look at what he does as a coach, I think a lot of teams would be, happy to have him around. He's got good systems, but ultimately wasn't able to get the team to buy in enough to have nearly enough playoff success to warrant him to come back for a sixth season. Just one series win in 5 years at the helm, just simply not good enough for a team of this caliber. Let me read the press release that the Maple Leafs sent out that accompanied the news of this firing. Let me just pull it up here. Doing a pod by yourself is definitely more difficult when you have to, you know, pull up stuff and also try keep talking at the same time to keep people engaged. But I've got it here. All right, so we're sharing it now. Perfect. Maple Leafs relief Keefe of head coaching duties. And here is the press release from the Maple Leafs. Quote, Toronto Maple Leafs general manager Brad Treliving today announced that Sheldon Keefe has been relieved of his role as head coach. The organization will immediately begin the search for a new head coach, and decisions regarding the remainder of the coaching staff will follow. Quote, today's decision was difficult. Sheldon is an excellent coach and a great man. However, we determined a new voice is needed to help push the team through to reach our ultimate goal. We thank Sheldon for his hard work and dedication to the organization over the last 9 years and wish him and his family all the best. Keefe coached the Maple Leafs to a 212, 97, and 40 record in 349 regular season games. The club recorded 3 consecutive 100-point seasons under Keefe, including a team record 115-point season in the 2021-22 season. Keefe was also at the helm of the Toronto Marlies for 5 seasons, during which they won the McGregor-Kilpatrick Trophy as the AHL's top regular season team, and on 2 occasions, or they did that on 2 occasions, and then did win the franchise's first Calder Cup championship back in 2018. So, Sheldon Keefe has been in the organization for a very long time when you think about it. He's been at the helm now for, five years with the Maple Leafs, and then 5 additional years when he was with the Toronto Marlies. So he's been with the team for a very long time, in the organization for a long time. And ultimately, although he got it done in the AHL with the Marlies, he did win with the Marlies. Couldn't win as the Maple Leafs head coach, and that's the big reason why he's not here today. Like I think Sheldon is a good coach. Don't get me wrong. He's a great coach. I have no doubt that he will find success elsewhere in the league, probably in Pittsburgh, for being honest, at some point. And I actually thought, again, like this was his best, season maybe as Maple Leafs head coach, navigating all of the wrath of injuries on the blue line, the suspensions, Marner getting hurt late in the season. You think about all of the new pieces that he had to work into the lineup and figure out what fits with Bertuzzi and Domi and Reeves. Like there's just so many guys. And then at the deadline, adding even more players and trying to figure out, all right, how can we get the most out of these players? Eventually, I think he hit a lot of the right buttons. But unfortunately, it was a little too late, right? Little too late in the process, which, that's the problem, right? Took him 5 years to get there, 5 years and 5 games, some would say. And sadly, time ran out for him with this group. And it is time for a change, and it is time for a new voice. There was one quote in particular that I want to get into from the press release there. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back. I'll reread the quote that I want to get into and kind of, pull it apart a little bit and try and see what does that mean. And we'll discuss who might be a couple of guys who the Toronto Maple Leafs could be looking at to replace Sheldon Keefe as the next head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's all coming up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the podcast, Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is a hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. We streamline hiring with powerful tools that help you find matched candidates. And with Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed.us. Uh, Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at indeed.com/locked on. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at indeed.com/locked on. That's indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a win, a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano here. Dave Morassutti will be back tomorrow. We'll go more in depth, on tomorrow's show. This is just an emergency podcast. Just trying to get a quick little, some quick hitters, some quick notes out there to you guys, so you don't have to wait all the way until tomorrow morning to get our thoughts. So this is just an immediate reaction podcast. We'll dive a little deeper into this situation on tomorrow's show. So make sure that you are subscribed to the Locked On Leafs podcast on whichever platform you use to stream your podcast, or also obviously up on YouTube. Sheldon Keefe, after 5 years, relieved as head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And there was one quote in particular in the press release that I thought was worth, I guess, repeating and kind of breaking down a little bit. And it was this one from Brad Treliving. Quote, "It was determined that a new voice is needed to help the team push through and reach our ultimate goal." I like that. That's pretty damning, I guess, where Brad Treliving believes, they put together quite a solid group for him this year. And unfortunately, they just weren't able to get it done. And a new voice is needed. I do agree. I think a change is needed and is necessary. But like, I think, again, just to kind of go back a little bit, I think that the team was in a place when he got hired where they needed a guy who was, still developing and, was a nurturing kind of coach. And that's what this team was. They were still young at the time. But now I think that they're experienced. And now I think that they need someone who's more stern and more demanding. And, not to say that Keefe wasn't, but I think after 5 years, the message gets stale. So when all of a sudden you go from being, kind of a nurturing coach, and look, there's been plenty of times where we've called this guy out for not being hard enough on his players, and even walking things back when he was hard on his players. And that did not sit well with a lot of us within Leafs Nation and Leafs media. And, it's that type of stuff that I think makes it difficult for him to randomly go and be bad cop and be so demanding when he's kind of let the inmates run the asylum for a little bit, especially when it comes to how he's dealt with the media and the way that he's spoken about his players in the media. So I think that they do need someone new, someone who can come in and just be different. I think they probably, go for someone who's got more experience, someone who's got more grit to them, someone who is going to be demanding right off the hop. I mean, you look at what Vancouver's done with Rick Tocchet. Like, somebody like him would be, a good piece of the puzzle, I think, for this Toronto Maple Leafs team, getting guys to buy in and play right and get them going in the right direction. Because 5 years, one series win, just not good enough. Just not good enough. And we'll get more into this on tomorrow's show, obviously, when we do the full report with Dave. But is it enough just to change the coach? That obviously I don't know. Like, there may need to be additional changes that are made on the ice and on the roster as well, significant changes as well. So we'll dive more into that on tomorrow's show. But as of now, as Tree Living noted in the presser, there is no determination on the future of Keefe's assistants. They're still employed as of now. That could change quickly whenever they do bring somebody in. Typically, that coach has some assistants that he may want. Some put his own guys in place, if you will. Management is expected to speak tomorrow on Friday. Keith Pelly, Brendan Shanahan, and GM Brad Treliving, all three expected to be in attendance for their end of season press conference, where I'm sure they'll be fielding questions about the head coaching search and the decision to let go of Sheldon Keefe, and we will react to all of that for you guys as well. As for who could be next, who's the guy who's getting that there are rumblings about possibly being the front runner for the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The name that keeps getting kind of thrown out there is Craig Berube, former head coach of the St. Louis Blues. Took them from last place to a Stanley Cup within months, which is very, very impressive, obviously. So that is a name that continues to get brought up, especially after the report came out that Ottawa wasn't willing to pay Berube the price tag that he wanted. Then they ended up going with Travis Green. Is a reason why Berube was so hell bent on a specific price tag, is because he had a feeling that maybe another team with heavy deep pockets might be come calling in the next couple of days, perhaps. That's the tinfoil hat theory in me that's kind of going awry right now when thinking about it. But Craig Berube, I would say, sounds as though he is the leader in the clubhouse right now. I'll be curious to see how long and extensive a head coaching search will be. That said, I may wait a little bit longer. And the reason why is because there is one other coach who I think would be a tremendous, tremendous addition to the Maple Leaf staff. And that is Rod Brindamore, who's currently in the Stanley Cup playoffs, down 2-0 in the series against the Rangers. And if they lose again, I'll be curious to see what his status will be. He's been around for a long time. He is a Canes legend, but ultimately, we've heard reports from various insiders that contract extension talks have not gone very well, and he is a pending UFA as a coach this offseason. And if he makes it to unrestricted free agent coach status and actually starts taking meetings with other teams, you bet your ass the Maple Leafs will be interested in a guy like Rod the Bod. And unlike the Carolina Hurricanes and Tom Dundon, MLSE has deep pockets and is willing to pay the price to get a coach like Rod Brindamore. So I will be curious to see if they roll the dice, I guess, and maybe wait on bringing in Berube, and maybe see if something ends up happening with Rod Brindamore. I think that would be kind of interesting. That said, there were reports that New Jersey is trying to zero in on Craig Berube, but I would think that the Maple Leafs head coaching job, very prestigious, and maybe Berube says, I'm gonna wait and see what happens here with Toronto before making a decision. But I don't know. We'll probably go through a few different more coaching hires. That was just off the top of my head. The couple of guys that would make sense to at least interview. Possibly do they consider keeping Guy Boucher in the fold? I doubt it, but maybe that's an option. Again, we can go through more of this on tomorrow's episode, which would be more of a flushed out episode with Dave and I. This one was just me getting on the mic, giving my immediate reaction, spitting out some facts about the situation, letting you guys know what's up, and giving you a little bit of my opinions on the firing of Sheldon Keefe. Which, to conclude, again, I think Keefe is a great coach. I think that he'll have success in this league one day, and one day very soon. I think he will be a head coach again in the National Hockey League. But ultimately, 5 years, you won one playoff series with this group of players who consistently not overperform, but performed extremely well in the regular season. Got the most out of them every single season. 3 consecutive 100 points. He has the winningest coaching percentage in Maple Leafs history throughout the regular season. But his legacy will always be known as a coach that couldn't get it done in the playoffs. Wasn't pushing the right buttons come playoff time, perhaps. And for that reason, it led to his dismissal as head coach of the Maple Leafs. And now someone else has to come in and try and press the right buttons to get this group into shape and going in the right direction and try and make the Stanley Cup run. It's been a long time since his team's even been on a run since 2002, since the first time that they've been on any type of run. I think I heard a stat the other day that the Toronto Maple Leafs are one of like 3 teams that have never played in the month of June, because back when they were, winning championships in the 60s and 50s and, pre expansion, the cup was awarded in like May. So since all the expansion and the season being extended, the Leafs have never played June hockey in their historied franchise, which is just wild to me. And it's simply not good enough for a team and a fan base that demands a lot more from this group. So bringing in a coach that'll be holding players accountable and demanding a heck of a lot more out of them, I think is a necessary change that needs to be made. So kudos to management and to Brad Treliving for coming to that decision today. And it's unfortunate, obviously, to think about a man getting fired and having to uproot his family. But thank you, Sheldon, for 5 seasons. Those were 5 great seasons in a vacuum, especially regular seasons. Lots to celebrate, especially with the milestones from a team and individual perspective. But again, it was all through the regular season without any playoff success. The next guy, we need to see playoff success. So we'll return tomorrow. I'll return tomorrow. Dave will be with me, and we'll dive deeper into this discussion. But that will do it for me for this emergency bonus podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Both Dave and I will continue to react on the Sheldon Keefe firing. Possibly more information will come out over the course of the day that we can add to the discourse that we've already provided here with this quick podcast. So make sure you come back tomorrow to continue the conversation. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.